welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a 5-year review of a device that's been my daily driver through thick and thin, the iPhone 11 Pro Max. It's 2024, this phone is quite a few years old at this stage, but is it still worth it? I bought this iPhone 11 Pro Max back in 2020 and in all honesty it's still going strong. This was my first ever Apple purchase, and once I bought it, the Apple ecosystem gradually started to pull me in. This phone has been with me everywhere and hasn't ever once let me down. Now let's talk about why I bought this phone in the first place. The reason being the cameras. Back when it was released, the camera system on the 11 Pro Max was versatile and quite impressive, and it still is even by today's standards. The 11 Pro and Pro Max series were the first iPhones to feature a triple lens camera setup, and while Apple do tend to lag behind other manufacturers in terms of introducing newer features into their phones, for example, we'd seen triple lens camera systems way before the 11 series had even come out, but ultimately I think Apple's implementation was the most complete. The 11 Pro Max features a triple lens setup with an ultra wide, a main camera and a 2x telephoto. All three lenses shoot some really nice looking 4K footage. Of course, the 4K footage from the main camera is better than that on the ultra wide, and you get the entire zoom range from 0.5x all the way up to 10x. So whether I'm capturing landscapes or zooming in on distant subjects, the phone has me covered. Although again, anything further than 2x is digital zoom, and quality does start to deteriorate after 4x. Now iPhones have always been renowned for their video quality, and this phone was no different. I don't know whether it's because we're so used to seeing iPhone quality on social media, but the iPhone 11 Pro Max consistently outperformed other phones I tried in terms of video quality, video stabilization, dynamic range, and color accuracy. Even after 5 years, it holds up remarkably well. Now, low light video quality isn't great. Even in 4K and acceptable lighting, you do lose a lot of detail, even on the main camera, which has the largest aperture of the three. But then again, it is a smartphone size camera sensor, so you do have to temper your expectations. But the ultra wide camera does deteriorate very, very quickly in less than ideal lighting conditions. In particular, the ultra wide camera, as good as it is in good lighting conditions, as soon as you're dealing with some challenging lighting conditions, it's just as bad. Another thing, there's no night mode on the ultra wide camera, which I think is a shame because it could have taken some incredible landscape or even astrophotography shots if night mode had been included in the ultra wide as well. Night mode on the 11 Pro Max at least is only available on the 1x main camera and the 2x telephoto, but those are features that Apple saved for subsequent models. If you're into video production like I am, here's a pro tip: download the Blackmagic camera app. It offers you way more control over your video settings than the stock iPhone camera app does, and alongside that it offers some incredible gimbal level stabilization, which, coupled with iPhone's already great in camera stabilization, means you can get some really stunning footage. Then there's Apple Pay. Now Apple Pay might seem like a small feature, but for me it's been an absolute game changer. It makes payments quick, secure, and incredibly efficient. Whether I'm grabbing a coffee or paying for groceries, it's just a quick tap and I'm done. Also, when I'm tapping in and out of the London Underground, way easier than Google Pay, Android Pay, or Samsung Pay. Another reason this phone has stuck with me has been its build quality. The phone is still in pristine condition, it's got zero significant wear and tear. I have it in Apple's Space Grey, and considering I've never dropped it or ever needed to replace any part on this thing, is probably another reason why I've kept it for so long. The stainless steel frame and the matte glass black have a sort of frosted look, and these have held up beautifully, and that's a testament to Apple's design and materials. I mean, you can tell this is a flagship phone. It's got significant weight in the hand, the glass is durable, and if Apple hadn't done a complete 180 with their design, i.e. the chassis, going back to boxy corners on the 12 and changing the notch to pill format. I mean, you'd find it hard to believe that this phone is now 5 years old at this stage. But then again, that's done by design. Apple want you to upgrade to their newest version, so they'll save those features and then introduce them in subsequent models. They'll give you slimmer bezels, they'll introduce the pill instead of the notch, and those little features to differentiate from previous models, but it is what it is. Now, one of the big reasons this still feels relevant is software support. Apple is great with their software support. They've continued to roll out iOS updates for this, and that's meant that my phone has remained secure and it's got all the new features that all the other phones have. In fact, this is running iOS 17 now and it's still running as smooth as ever. Apple in general tend to offer longer software support terms than other manufacturers, and I think that's definitely a plus point. I think this is down to receive the iOS 18 update as well. Now, it's entirely possible that performance on this has slowed down, but at least for me, perceived performance is still fast and quick enough for my daily use. And this is something that YouTubers like Mr. Who's the Boss and MKBHD in particular, Marques Brownlee, they talk about, that phones can't really get that much better than they already are. They're so close to the ceiling of their capabilities that the differences from one to the next to the other are just small perceived differences and incremental upgrades. In terms of what they can offer me, for me at least, the differences in subsequent models has been really small. Now, I've had other phones that have had some quite significant bugs. They'll often shut off, or an app won't work, or something won't update. That hasn't been the case with my iPhone 11 Pro Max. And I think because Apple designed their phones from the ground up, they're involved in the production of every single part rather than having to piece together parts from other manufacturers like Samsung or Sony or Google have to do. I think they can make sure it's a much more smoother experience for the end user. Ultimately, it makes for a smoother UI experience, and I've never had one bug with this phone in all my 4 years of having it. And going back to my other point, I think the 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max series were the last phones where Apple made a substantive upgrade over the previous model, the XS Max at the time. The jump from the iPhone XS Max to the iPhone 11 Pro series was the greatest leap forward in terms of additional features, and ever since then, every new device has just had incremental upgrades over the last. I mean, the only substantial upgrades I can think of that the 15 has over this is 120Hz screen and USB-C. After that, I start sort of thinking, what else am I getting for my money? Now, obviously, I do miss out on some other features that were introduced after the 11 series. The most glaring one seems to be MagSafe, so I don't have access to that entire range of accessories and products, but honestly, I can still charge wirelessly, and that's hardly an inconvenience. There are a certain few areas where the 11 Pro Max has begun to show its age. Like I said, for instance, it lacks a 120Hz display, which now is a standard feature even in budget phones. Now, if you've experienced a high refresh rate screen, going back to 60Hz can look really quite sluggish. Also, while the A13 Bionic chip on the 11 Pro Max is still, like I said, performance is still good, newer chips are far more efficient and less power hungry. Case in point, for example, when I am putting the phone under heavy load, for example, when I'm taking 4K video for extended periods of time, or doing any heavy multitasking, the back of the phone can get a little bit hot. USB-C. Apple held out with their proprietary Lightning connector for as long as they possibly could, but I will admit, with everything else being USB-C, it would be much more convenient to also have USB-C charging on this as well, rather than having to carry around another Lightning cable just to charge my iPhone. Design. I mean, in large part, the design of this was outdated due to Apple's own updates in the design of their newer phones. The notch that's been changed to a pill, and the bezels, which on this are quite a bit larger than the ones on the newest offerings from Apple. But then again, I don't think design should be a reason for you to upgrade something. It is just a phone at the end of the day. It's just a tool. Now, for me, smartphone camera improvements don't affect me too much because I have a dedicated camera for video and photo. So while the newer improvements in iPhone cameras are nice, they're not a deal breaker for me. Plus, battery life on this, I'm not going to say it's impressive, but it's still passable. I can still get up to 6 hours of screen on time with it, so just about a day's use. In tech, there's a scale that a buyer sits on. The scale goes all the way from consumer to creator. If you're just on the consumer side, it's unlikely that you'll need the latest and greatest tech to fulfill your consumer needs, because it's unlikely that you'll be able to take full advantage of the capabilities of something. For example, I don't think it would make sense to buy a top spec iPad Pro if the only reason you're purchasing it is to watch Netflix. And that's why with my phone, I'm still more on the consumer side of things. The creation side of things happens in large part on my PC and here and there on my iPad. For the little production that I do use my phone for, i.e. mainly video, it still works absolutely fine for that purpose. Now, I only bought this because I wanted to try iPhone. I'd been Android the whole way beforehand, but I probably would have had to purchase an iPhone regardless because of work and how much easier it is to get things done on iOS as compared to Android. For security authentication at work, there's an app we use which on iPhone takes one click and you're authenticated. On Android, it takes up to 15 minutes using a string of different passcodes. So is the iPhone 11 Pro Max worth it in 2024? I would say yes, but I would also say to check out the iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max series. They'll give you a bit more cushion in terms of the years of software updates and support you'll receive. You also get the newer design, the boxy design and MagSafe. But as a starting point, I think the 11 series, the 11 Pro and Pro Max series have been greatly overlooked. I always see those best budget phone lists on Tech Radar and T3 and Wired, and they tend to say that the best budget iPhone is the iPhone SE, which I completely disagree with. It's an older design, it's a smaller screen, it's got a smaller battery capacity, single camera, no Face ID. Now sure, you get a better processor, you get the A15 instead of the A13, but for the same ballpark price, or maybe even cheaper, I'd much rather have this phone or the 12 Pro Max series with Face ID, a larger screen, and all the flagship features of yesteryear. I don't really understand why the SE gets recommended so much. iPhones are expensive, especially the newest ones, and a good way to get into the ecosystem without breaking the bank is to go for one of the older flagships. With the 11 Pro Max or 12 Pro Max series, you won't be giving up too many features, and I know this isn't a smartphone recommendation video, but alternatively, there are much better value propositions from Xiaomi, Sony, OnePlus, and even Google. Now, like we said, if you use your phone for mainly consumption purposes, for social media, scrolling through TikTok, for watching a YouTube video here and there, it may not be the best investment to buy the latest and greatest every single year. That's all for this video. If you like this style of video, I made a video on my everyday carry. If you want to watch that, click up there. That's everything I carry with me on a daily basis. Hope this video was useful. If it was, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.